What'd you think of the whole the whole production yesterday?
I thought it was incredible. I thought it was a 5 out of 5, a 10 out of 10, whatever you want to grade it on. I thought the park looked great. I thought the ceremonies were awesome. Reggie Jackson kind of stole the show, which I know we're going to play the Reggie audio. And I think you said it perfectly in our show thread. You can't play that sound enough, especially, white guy to white guy. It's a constant reminder, for me anyway, of, remembering what this country has been about and also remembering what, people of color, black people went through and continue to go through in this country. So for me, it serves as a great reminder. It's a 2-minute soundbite that really just kind of reminds me of how awful this country is to some people.
Well, enough references to the point where if you have not heard this, we'll play it for you here in just a moment. It's been circulating now for obviously almost 24 hours since he said it. But Dibs, I am so thankful that he did that. Because one, it was courageous, but two, it was something that was so needed that I didn't even know was needed. Right. I had been thinking about this all week, and I didn't really know what to do with it in my mind. Two different things happening at the same time, seemingly opposed. And here's what I mean by that. I was very interested in this event. I thought, what a unique thing. The minute they announced this a year ago, I'm like, I need to be there. I want to go. Didn't come together. Whatever. Fine. But I was so interested. I was so excited that Willie Mays was so attached to it, that the Giants were a part of it. I loved how much we all learned through the process. But there was a little thing somewhere in my gut that was kind of gnawing at this whole thing all year long as we move toward it. We want to celebrate the players who in some ways had to go through here. But what happened there was not to be celebrated. So what do you do with that? You want to acknowledge the Negro League players without sort of like also celebrating the fact that there had to be a Negro League because racism was so awful then, continues to be really some of the worst stuff that there is on Earth, and obviously continues to be something that we're hit in the face with every single day. We've got an election in about 3 or 4 months, and this subject is right at the forefront of it, continues to be. So this gnawed at me because I'm like, Birmingham, Alabama, the players who weren't lucky enough to play at Rickwood, they had to play at Rickwood because they weren't allowed to play in some of the cathedrals in other cities around the country. I didn't know kind of what to do with that. You want to celebrate, you want to acknowledge the Negro League players who are still alive, who came out onto the field, looked like they were just overcome with joy, that they were being acknowledged, that they were being represented. And I loved that part of it. But there was also this other piece where you're like, are we going to act like this was all wonderful?
Right.
Does this, hey, white baseball, does this make you feel better about yourself now? Does this make you feel better about your history? Do you feel like this is an apology? Is that okay? That gnawed at me. And I'm like, I'm not really sure how to express this. Thank you, Reggie Jackson.
Exactly.
You just went and did it. Well, and that's what I was feeling.
And you and I could never express any part of it as far as like what we think that it would mean to anybody. And for Reggie to talk about it, playing there as a minor leaguer, obviously he played in the post-Negro League era, and so he had to go there as a minor leaguer. And again, you didn't have much of a choice when you were a AA player and you got assigned to Birmingham and you had to go there. And the stories that he told in that Fox pregame and just the way he was so real and raw about that and the way he expressed it, it did exactly remind me of what you're talking about. And he brings up the 1965 church bombings, and there are so many atrocities that happened to people of color, to black people in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. I don't know all of it, and I wish that I was more well-versed in it, and I learn more and more each and every day about what they did to Tulsa for example, where they took out an entire community and basically decimated it, and it would never recover. Tulsa, one of the great black centers in our country, and they went in and burned the entire thing down. And by they, I mean white people. I mean, racists and Ku Klux Klan members and the church bombings. And Reggie brings it up again, and he had to go there and play and be called all kinds of things and not be able to stay and eat and all those things. And it's a great reminder, not only for me, somebody who's old enough to have learned a lot, but also younger people who were born in America at a time where, you don't understand the history of hatred in this country. 888-957-9570. For those of you who have not yet heard what Reggie Jackson said, this came on the panel last night pre-game, and Alex Rodriguez, and I'll paraphrase, simply asked Reggie what it meant to him to be back in Birmingham, Alabama, and at that stadium. And here's his answer.
Coming back here is not easy. The racism that I played here, when I played here, the difficulty of going through different places where we traveled. Fortunately, I had a manager and I had players on the team that helped me get through it. But I wouldn't wish it on anybody. People said to me today, I spoke, and they said, you think you're a better person? You think you won when you played here and conquered? I said, I would never want to do it again. I walked into restaurants and they would point at me and said, the can't eat here. I would go to a hotel and they say, the can't stay here. We went to Charlie Finley's country club for a welcome home dinner, and they pointed me out with the N-word. He can't come in here. Finley marched the whole team out. Finally, they let me in there. He said, we're going to go to the diner and eat hamburgers. We'll go where we're wanted. Fortunately, I had a manager, Johnny McNamara, that if I couldn't eat in the place, nobody would eat. We'd get food to travel. If I couldn't stay in a hotel, they'd drive to the next hotel and find a place where I could stay. Had it not been for Raleigh Fingers, Johnny McNamara, Dave Duncan, Joe and Sharon Rudy, I slept on their couch 3-4 nights a week for about a month and a half. Finally, they were threatened that they would burn our apartment complex down unless I got out. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. The year I came here, Bull Connor was the sheriff the year before. And they took minor league baseball out of here because in 1963, the Klan murdered 4 black girls, children, in 11, 12, 14 years old at a church here and never got indicted. It was there from the Klan. Life magazine did a story on them like they were being honored. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. At the same time, had it not been for my white friends, had it not been for a white manager, and Rudy, Fingers, and Duncan, and Lee Myers, I would have never made it. I was too physically violent. I was ready to physically fight some. I'd have got killed here because I'd have beat someone's ass, and you'd have saw me in an oak tree somewhere.
Thank you, Reggie Jackson.
My God.
For doing exactly what I couldn't even put my finger on what's the right way to do all of this. And I bet Reggie sat when they invited him. This is just my guess now. When he got invited back by Major League Baseball, I bet he sat there for a day or two or a week and he thought about it because first thing he said, wasn't easy coming back here. But Reggie did 2 things. A, he showed up. He showed up to be honored, but then he also told the truth about what this was that we're sitting here honoring. So make sure, and this is the coaching that I've accepted, make sure we're honoring the right things. Make sure we're honoring Willie Mays. Make sure we're honoring those Negro League players who are still with us, who in some cases were wheeled out onto the playing field last night. Let's make sure we're honoring those who had to deal with that place rather than just honoring that place. That's an important distinction that Reggie, I think, helped America arrive at.
Right, and to also deliver in a verbal fashion the history of what actually took place there beyond just the Negro League team and Rickwood Field and, hey, MLB's back. And I do think there's a certain sense of the whitewashing of history when you just add those numbers to the record book.
Yeah.
It kind of takes what those players had to go through and just, hey, it was pro ball. We know that. So come on into the record books and we're just going to lump those numbers in.
There's no clean way to do it. There's no
easy way to do it. And I do like the gesture from MLB to recognize that those were major league numbers. So you're right. There is no easy way to go about adding those in. But I do think that there's a certain sense of the whitewashing of it. And okay, now that your numbers are in, all's forgiven, right, everybody? And for Reggie to speak the way he spoke about his experience and, for Joe Rudy and his wife to take him in their apartment in Birmingham. And then after a month and a half, the word gets out that Reggie's staying there and now we're going to burn down the building. And this is not, 1861 now. This is only about 65, 70 years ago. And it just reminds me of what still goes on in this country. And so the word I used in the crossover is one that I'm trying to really keep in the front of my mind about giving grace, not only to black people, but all people, understanding, what their life has been, what their day has been, instead of, and, you pointed it out during the crossover and you did it partly tongue in cheek at me because I am down to flip the bird, but it's about just grace in general. Like, can we give each other a little bit of room? Can we take a breath and realize that whatever person, whatever color, whatever situation, maybe they're having a day.
Well, and I think that there's that, and there's also just what experiencing this yesterday really helped bring some clarity to what it is we're celebrating. And so that's what I chose to do, is I chose to focus on this being a celebration of certain people, not a city, and the ballpark is a piece. It's the backdrop for this. But yesterday was about celebrating people who should have been celebrated a different way and a long time ago. And so and I think Willie even said this once upon a time, and he might have been talking about Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame. Better late than never. And so here we are. We arrived at an opportunity yesterday to celebrate people who should have been celebrated a long time ago. And so it would have been better for it to be early, but it's better late than never. And here we are. 888-95